In this video, we're diving into truthy and falsy values in JavaScript. If you've ever seen an if statement and wondered why something behaves the way it does, then this video is going to be for you. Now in JavaScript, every value is either truthy or falsy when used in a Boolean, such as an if statement. And a truthy value is anything that behaves like true, and a falsy value is anything that behaves like false. And I think in order to understand what is true, it's great to start with what is false. So I have some examples of the false items, and I want to go through those. So the first one is going to be false. That's going to be the most familiar ones. We also have 0. We have -0. We have O of n, which is big int 0. We have the empty string, null, undefined, and not a number. So these are all going to be falsy values, and everything else is truthy, even things you might not expect. So we have a couple examples I want to show you, and we're going to hop right into Visual Studio Code. In Visual Studio Code, I have a sandbox environment of just an HTML file with boilerplate and a sandbox.js files to run the JavaScript, which holds all the examples. And then I have the console on the right side. Now, the first example I want to go through is right here. And in this example, we see two if statements. We have if of 0, which we discussed as a false value, and then we want run a console statement, and then we have another if statement of just a string. So we discussed that 0 counts as one of those false statements, and we see that that's not appearing in the console. But we see that if hello as a string, that's going to come across as true because it's not an empty string, and that's why you're seeing that in the console. So that is one example of falsy versus truthy values. Now the next one, and I want to bring this up. The next one we have is an if statement with an empty array and an if statement with an empty object. And both of these are going to be considered truthy. And if we look at our list here, we see that an empty array and an empty object are not considered one of these. Empty string is, but not an empty array and an empty object. So that is another, example of truthy values, like so. And then the final example, to give a bit more context. Now this won't exactly run because we don't have any more logic set up. But with this, if we were to check if a user input exists, then we could proceed with something. Let's say you have some sort of website, you need to get some user input from a user. You wait for if the user input is there, then go ahead and proceed with an action. Otherwise, we need to ask for that input. And this solution works because a user input is going to start as an empty string. And so this is one example of an implementation you can do on a website. So to conclude, truthy and falsy are very simple concepts to grasp, but it can be very powerful, and it's good to understand what can be considered truthy as you're building out projects. That's pretty much everything. If you found this valuable, be sure to stay tuned for more to come. And that's it for today. Thanks so much, and have a great day.